Manifestation does not begin in the external world. It begins in a silent, almost imperceptible moment inside you, long before any desire takes form. It begins in that subtle space where frustration, hope, exhaustion, and longing quietly coexist. Many people arrive at the idea of manifestation not because life is abundant, but because something feels deeply misaligned. There is often a sense of effort without reward, intention without response, and prayer without echo. This inner dissonance is not a failure of willpower or faith. It is a signal that the way you have been relating to reality no longer matches who you are becoming. For decades, neuroscience and contemplative traditions have been pointing to the same realization. Reality does not respond to what you want, but to who you are being at an energetic and emotional level. Dr. Joe Dispenza often describes this as the moment when the body is still living in the past, while the mind is attempting to create a new future. When your nervous system remains conditioned by stress, lack, or self-doubt, it continuously broadcasts the same internal state, regardless of how clear your intentions may seem. Manifestation fails not because the universe is withholding, but because coherence has not yet been established. This video is not about wishing harder, visualizing longer, or forcing belief. It is about understanding the internal mechanics that allow intention to collapse into experience. Physics teaches us that potential exists everywhere, but only specific conditions allow it to become form. In the same way, your desires already exist as possibilities, waiting for a precise alignment between thought, emotion, and identity. When that alignment occurs, manifestation feels less like effort and more like inevitability. As you continue, allow yourself to listen without urgency. You are not here to chase outcomes, but to remember how reality responds when inner coherence replaces inner conflict. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about finally stopping the internal resistance to who you already are becoming. If this resonates with you, take a moment to ground yourself. Stay present, and allow this journey to unfold naturally. The invisible field, where all possibilities already exist, there is a dimension of reality that most people sense but rarely understand. It is not visible, not solid, and not governed by linear logic, yet it quietly shapes everything that eventually becomes tangible. Physics describes it as a field of probabilities, a space where nothing is fixed and everything exists as potential. Long before an experience becomes real, it exists there first, suspended, waiting for the precise conditions that allow it to emerge. This is not mysticism disguised as science, nor science stripped of meaning. It is the meeting point where observation, consciousness, and energy converge. Human beings are not separate from this field. They are immersed in it at every moment, interacting with it continuously through thoughts, emotions, and internal states. What often goes unnoticed is that the field does not respond to desire alone. Desire by itself is neutral. It becomes effective only when paired with emotional coherence and identity alignment. When the inner world is fragmented, the signal sent into this field is equally fragmented. The result is inconsistency, delay, or repetition of the same experiences under different names. Many people live under the assumption that reality is rigid and external, something that happens to them rather than through them. This perception creates a subtle form of helplessness. The individual begins to relate to life as a sequence of events to endure, rather than a dialogue in which they participate. Over time, this reinforces a sense of disconnection, as if effort and intention are constantly met with silence. Yet the silence is not emptiness, it is feedback. The field responds not to what is spoken internally, but to what is embodied. When emotions contradict intentions, the body becomes the dominant voice. A person may consciously desire abundance, connection, or clarity, while subconsciously rehearsing scarcity, loss, or uncertainty through emotional memory. The nervous system, conditioned by past experiences, continues to recreate familiar states because familiarity feels safer than the unknown, even when the unknown represents growth. This is why change often feels uncomfortable before it feels liberating. The moment an individual begins to shift internally, the body resists, not out of sabotage, but out of loyalty to what it has known. Stress hormones, habitual thoughts, and emotional reflexes attempt to preserve the old identity. From the perspective of the field, the signal remains unchanged until this internal negotiation resolves. Potential remains potential. What is rarely discussed is that manifestation is not about pulling something toward you. It is about removing internal interference. When resistance dissolves, coherence naturally forms. Thought and emotion begin to align, and the signal entering the field becomes clear, stable, and sustained. In physics, coherence allows waves to amplify rather than cancel each other out. Internally, coherence allows intention to carry weight rather than contradiction. There is a subtle shift that occurs when this understanding takes root. The individual stops asking why something has not arrived and begins to notice who they are being while waiting. Waiting itself carries information. It can be filled with trust or tension, openness or control. The field responds accordingly, not as judgment, but as reflection. Ancient traditions spoke of this through metaphor, describing reality as a mirror or a living intelligence. Modern science reframes it as an interactive system governed by feedback loops. Both point to the same principle: consistency within creates responsiveness without. When the internal state stabilizes, external circumstances reorganize in ways that appear coincidental but are anything but random. This does not mean that every thought instantly reshapes reality. It means that sustained internal states gradually define the boundaries of experience. Repetition matters. Emotional rehearsal matters. Identity matters. The field is patient, neutral, and precise. It does not rush and it does not forget. As awareness deepens, something else becomes apparent. Many people are not blocked from receiving. They are over-identified with effort. They try to manage outcomes instead of embodying states. Control becomes a substitute for trust, and urgency replaces presence. These states generate noise in the signal, making clarity impossible. The field responds with more complexity, more delay, more lessons disguised as obstacles. When effort softens into alignment, a different relationship with reality emerges. Life begins to feel less adversarial and more responsive. Opportunities arise without force, insights arrive without strain. This is not because the universe has changed, but because the individual has stopped contradicting themselves internally. The invisible field has always been listening. The question has never been whether it responds, but how clearly the message is being transmitted. Emotional coherence and the silent architecture of identity. Beneath every intention lives an emotional landscape that rarely receives honest attention. People often believe their thoughts are in control, yet emotions quietly shape perception, decision-making, and expectation long before logic has a chance to intervene. This hidden layer is not chaotic by nature. It is structured through memory, repetition, and identity. Emotional coherence is not a technique or a discipline. It is the natural state that emerges when inner signals stop contradicting one another. Identity is not defined by words, affirmations, or conscious declarations. It is defined by what feels familiar in the body. The nervous system becomes accustomed to certain emotional ranges, whether they involve struggle, anticipation, disappointment, or hope restrained by caution. Over time, these emotional patterns crystallize into a sense of self. A person does not simply think they are someone. They feel like someone. That feeling becomes the lens through which reality is interpreted. When desire arises from an identity that has not yet expanded, tension appears. The mind imagines a future that the body does not recognize. This mismatch generates discomfort, often interpreted as doubt or impatience. In truth, it is the nervous system attempting to protect continuity. Emotional coherence dissolves when the future feels unsafe to the body, even if it appears desirable to the intellect. Neuroscience observes that the body responds to emotional memory faster than conscious thought. The heart rate shifts, muscles tense, and hormones release before words form. This means that emotional states are not reactions. They are predictions based on past experience. When someone has repeatedly associated effort with disappointment or vulnerability with loss, the body learns to anticipate similar outcomes. Even in moments of opportunity, subtle resistance arises, not as fear, but as familiarity. Emotional coherence begins when internal patterns are no longer reinforced unconsciously. This does not require force or correction. It requires awareness. Awareness softens rigidity. When emotions are observed without judgment, their grip loosens. They stop defining identity and begin revealing conditioning. The individual moves from being the emotion to witnessing the emotion. This shift alone alters the internal signal. There is a profound difference between wanting change and being internally available for it. Availability is emotional openness without urgency. It is the absence of internal negotiation. When emotional coherence is present, thought, feeling, and expectation move in the same direction. The body no longer signals resistance while the mind signals desire. The field receives clarity instead of contradiction. Many misunderstand emotional intensity as alignment. Strong desire, however, often carries desperation, which is itself a form of attachment to lack. Coherence is quieter. It carries a sense of neutrality infused with readiness. It does not demand proof. It does not rush outcomes. It rests in internal stability. This stability allows identity to loosen its boundaries. Identity shifts not through confrontation, but through repetition of new internal experiences. Each moment of calm in uncertainty, each instance of trust without evidence, subtly rewires emotional memory. The body begins to register safety in unfamiliar states. Over time, the unknown becomes less threatening. Potential becomes approachable. Psychology describes this as emotional regulation. Spiritual traditions describe it as inner alignment. Physics describes it as resonance. Different languages, same mechanism. When internal states resonate, amplification occurs. When they conflict, cancellation occurs. Life reflects whichever pattern is dominant. This explains why certain people appear to manifest with ease, while others struggle despite effort. Ease is not a personality trait. It is the byproduct of coherence. These individuals are not free from challenges, but they are not internally divided by them. Their identity remains stable even when circumstances fluctuate. This stability allows reality to reorganize around them. Emotional coherence also reshapes perception of time. Waiting loses its charge. Absence loses its meaning. The future no longer feels distant. It feels integrated. This integration collapses the psychological gap between now and what is desired. The body begins to feel aligned with experiences that have not yet occurred. From the perspective of the field, the signal has already changed. There is a quiet power in this state. It does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It simply exists as internal order. When identity no longer resists expansion, reality responds not with drama but with precision. The architecture of manifestation is not built through force. It is revealed through coherence. When emotions, identity, and expectation converge, possibility transitions into experience without friction. When time collapses and intention becomes experience, time, as it is commonly understood, is not an objective force moving independently of human perception. It is a psychological and emotional construct shaped by anticipation, memory, and expectation. People experience time as slow when they resist the present and fast when they are absorbed by it. In the context of manifestation, time becomes the silent mediator between internal alignment and external confirmation. What feels delayed is often not postponed by reality, but stretched by internal tension. From a neurological perspective, the brain constantly predicts the future based on the past. These predictions shape perception so thoroughly that the future often feels like a continuation rather than a creation. When someone imagines a desired outcome while emotionally anchored to previous disappointment, the future is filtered through memory. The body responds as if the past is still unfolding. This creates the sensation of waiting, striving, and efforting against time itself. Manifestation appears instant only when the psychological distance between the present identity and the desired experience disappears. This distance is not measured in days or years, but in emotional familiarity. When an experience feels emotionally reachable, it arrives naturally. When it feels foreign, time stretches. The collapse of time is not a miracle. It is a shift in perception driven by coherence. There is a moment when intention stops feeling like a request and begins feeling like recognition. This moment is subtle. It is often accompanied by calm rather than excitement, clarity rather than anticipation. The mind stops rehearsing outcomes. The body stops scanning for confirmation. Identity relaxes its grip on timelines. In this state, intention is no longer projected forward. It is felt inwardly as already integrated. Physics suggests that observation plays a role in determining outcomes. Consciousness does not merely witness reality, it participates in its unfolding. When attention is fragmented by doubt, urgency, or comparison, the observational field becomes unstable. Outcomes fluctuate. When attention is steady and uncharged, probability stabilizes. Experience follows. This does not imply passivity. It implies presence. Presence removes distortion. Distortion elongates time. When someone is deeply present, they are no longer negotiating with the future. They are inhabiting the state that the future represents. From the field's perspective, the distinction between now and later becomes irrelevant. Many people mistake effort for progress. Effort often arises from the fear that something will not happen without control. Control introduces resistance. Resistance reinforces separation. Separation keeps intention at a distance. The collapse of time occurs when separation dissolves. When the internal dialogue quiets, reality reorganizes without friction. Identity plays a crucial role here. An identity rooted in becoming is always oriented toward the future. An identity rooted in being is anchored in the present. Manifestation accelerates when identity shifts from pursuit to embodiment. The individual no longer relates to desire as something missing, but as something emerging naturally from who they are. This shift alters how synchronicities are perceived. Events that once seemed random begin to feel responsive. Opportunities arise without dramatic effort. Conversations align. Information appears at precise moments. These are not signs of luck. They are reflections of internal order. When internal timing stabilizes, external timing synchronizes. Emotional neutrality is often misunderstood as indifference. In truth, it is the absence of internal struggle. Neutrality allows intention to exist without attachment. Attachment binds intention to outcome. Neutrality allows intention to flow. The field responds more efficiently to clarity than to intensity. This state also transforms how obstacles are experienced. Challenges no longer feel like delays. They feel like recalibrations. The individual remains internally stable even when circumstances shift. Stability maintains coherence. Coherence sustains resonance. Resonance accelerates manifestation. Time collapses when the future no longer feels separate from the present self. This integration is not achieved through mental effort, but through emotional settling. The body begins to feel safe in the unknown. Safety allows openness. Openness allows reception. In this state, manifestation feels less like creation and more like recognition. The individual recognizes themselves in the experience that arrives. There is no shock, only confirmation. The moment feels inevitable rather than surprising. The paradox is simple yet profound. The less one negotiates with time, the faster reality responds. The less one demands proof, the sooner confirmation appears. The field mirrors internal certainty, not external pressure. When intention becomes experience, it does so quietly. There is no announcement, no dramatic shift in the sky. There is simply alignment made visible. The collapse of time is not an event. It is a realization. The quiet dissolution of internal resistance and the return to flow. Resistance rarely announces itself as opposition. It disguises itself as caution, realism, or the need to be prepared. It often sounds like responsibility or maturity, yet beneath these rationalizations lies a subtle refusal to fully inhabit the present moment. Internal resistance is not the absence of desire. It is the tension between wanting change and remaining loyal to familiar emotional states. This tension fragments energy and disperses attention, creating a constant sense of effort without movement. The body becomes the primary archive of this resistance. Muscles hold memories that words never touched. Breath patterns reveal unspoken fears. The nervous system adapts to survival long before expansion becomes a conscious goal. Over time, these adaptations feel like personality, even though they are simply responses that were never updated. When identity is shaped by these responses, flow feels unsafe because it lacks structure, predictability, and control. Flow is not chaos. It is intelligent movement without internal friction. In states of flow, action arises naturally, guided by internal signals rather than external pressure. People often describe flow as effortless, yet it requires a deep internal permission to release control. Control, for many, has been mistaken for safety. Letting go feels like vulnerability, and vulnerability has often been associated with loss. Internal resistance intensifies when the mind attempts to manage outcomes. Planning, evaluating, and anticipating are useful functions, but when they dominate consciousness, they disconnect the individual from immediate experience. Presence fades, the body tightens, emotional coherence dissolves, the signal sent into the field becomes inconsistent. Manifestation stalls not because the desire is unclear, but because the internal state is divided. Resistance also manifests through identity reinforcement. A person unconsciously defends who they have been, even while desiring something new. This defense is subtle. It appears as self-description, storytelling, and emotional familiarity. The narrative of struggle becomes comfortable. The narrative of ease feels foreign. Without realizing it, the individual resists states that contradict their self-image. The dissolution of resistance does not occur through confrontation. It occurs through recognition. When resistance is seen clearly, without judgment, it loses its authority. It no longer needs to be fought or removed. Awareness alone creates space. In that space, the body begins to soften. Breath deepens. Attention stabilizes. These physiological shifts signal safety to the nervous system. Safety allows flow. Flow is often mistaken for passivity because it lacks urgency. In truth, flow is highly responsive. Decisions are made quickly, not because of pressure, but because clarity is present. There is no internal debate. Action and intention align. The individual becomes less reactive and more receptive. Receptivity is not waiting, it is openness without resistance. This openness transforms how reality is perceived. Situations that once felt obstructive now appear informational. Delays reveal refinement rather than denial. Challenges feel less personal. Emotional charge dissipates. The internal environment becomes quieter, and in that quiet, subtle guidance becomes noticeable. Resistance also dissolves when identity becomes flexible. Flexibility allows adaptation without self-betrayal. The individual no longer clings to a fixed image of who they are. They allow themselves to evolve without explanation. This internal permission accelerates alignment. The field responds to flexibility with opportunity. There is a natural intelligence within the body that guides flow when it is not overridden. Intuition emerges not as a voice, but as a sense of timing. Actions feel appropriately paced. Words arise without rehearsal. Connections form organically. This intelligence has always been present, but resistance muffled its signals. Flow restores a sense of trust that is not blind, but embodied. Trust is felt as steadiness rather than optimism. It does not require guarantees. It rests in internal alignment. When trust replaces control, the internal signal stabilizes. Stability allows manifestation to unfold without force. As resistance dissolves, effort transforms into participation. Life no longer feels like a series of obstacles to overcome, but a process to engage with. Engagement replaces striving. Presence replaces anticipation. The individual stops pushing against reality and begins moving with it. This movement feels natural because it is natural. It does not require constant affirmation or reinforcement. It sustains itself through coherence. The internal environment becomes congruent with the desired experience. From the field's perspective, the individual has already shifted. Flow is not achieved, it is returned to. Resistance is not defeated, it is understood. When understanding replaces tension, the architecture of manifestation completes itself quietly, efficiently, and without spectacle. What has unfolded throughout this journey is not a promise of instant miracles, nor a formula designed to control life's outcomes. It is a reframing of how reality actually responds when the internal world reaches a state of order. Manifestation, when stripped of mythology and exaggeration, reveals itself as a natural consequence of coherence. When thought, emotion, identity, and presence begin to move in the same direction, the external world reorganizes without resistance. The greatest misunderstanding around manifestation has always been the belief that something must be forced into existence. In truth, what delays transformation is not a lack of effort, but an excess of internal contradiction. When the nervous system remains anchored to familiar emotional patterns, even the most sincere intentions struggle to find ground. Reality does not resist change. It reflects consistency, and consistency is born from inner stability. Throughout life, People learn to associate safety with predictability. They become loyal to patterns that once protected them, even when those patterns no longer serve their growth. This loyalty quietly shapes identity, expectations, and perception. Yet the moment awareness replaces autopilot, those patterns loosen their grip. Awareness does not fight the past. It integrates it, and integration restores flow. What emerges from this understanding is a softer relationship with reality. Less negotiation, less urgency, less internal noise. In that softness, something profound occurs. Possibility no longer feels distant. Time no longer feels heavy. Desire no longer feels separate from the present self. The gap between intention and experience narrows, not because reality accelerates, but because resistance dissolves. This is where manifestation becomes almost unnoticeable. Changes arrive without drama. Opportunities feel timely rather than surprising. Outcomes feel aligned rather than earned. There is no need to convince oneself that life is responding. The response becomes evident through lived experience. The individual recognizes themselves in the reality that unfolds. Importantly, this state does not remove challenges or uncertainty. It changes how they are met. Challenges lose their emotional charge. Uncertainty loses its threat. The internal environment remains coherent even as circumstances evolve. This coherence becomes the true foundation of transformation. Not belief, not visualization, not repetition. Coherence. When identity becomes flexible, when emotion becomes regulated without suppression, when presence replaces anticipation, reality has no conflicting signal to interpret. The field responds with clarity because clarity is what it receives. In this sense, manifestation is not about creating something new. It is about allowing what already exists in potential to become visible. The quiet truth is that reality has always been responding. Every experience has been feedback. The only question has been whether the signal was coherent or fragmented. As coherence stabilizes, response becomes unmistakable, not louder, just clearer. This is not the end of a process. It is the recognition of one. The recognition that alignment is not achieved through effort, but through release. That transformation is not forced, but permitted. And that the most profound changes often arrive without announcement, simply because they finally feel natural. As this chapter comes to a close, a single question remains, one that does not demand an answer immediately, but lingers quietly beneath the surface of awareness. Who would you become if nothing inside you resisted the life that is trying to meet you? This question is not meant to provoke urgency or pressure. It is meant to invite honesty. Because the moment resistance softens, identity shifts and presence stabilizes, reality begins to mirror that change with precision. What unfolds next is not random. It is responsive. If this exploration has resonated with something deeper within you, if the ideas you encountered felt less like information and more like recognition, this channel was created for that exact moment. Subscribing allows this dialogue to continue, not as passive content, but as an ongoing journey into clarity, alignment, and understanding. Each video builds upon the last, forming a coherent path rather than isolated insights. Remaining connected also ensures that these reflections do not end here. The next video waiting on the final screen continues this exploration, expanding on how coherence stabilizes over time and how inner alignment reshapes daily experience in subtle but lasting ways. It is a natural continuation of what has already begun. Consider sharing your thoughts in the comments as well. Reflection deepens when it is articulated. What stood out to you most? What shifted internally as you listened? These shared insights create resonance beyond the individual experience. For now, allow the ideas to settle. Let them integrate without effort, and when you are ready, continue forward. The path does not demand certainty, only presence.